Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Today, what we're going to focus on in this lesson, and for the life of me, I don't know why, we're still having trouble, but we need to work on factoring. I know we started with factoring because I thought that was the easiest thing to do, and then we got into the vertex form and putting everything in standard form. I had to get a drink of water here. But we found some easier methods, or I did, to be able to go back and forth between quadratic equations. So that's what we're going to do. We need to learn how to go backward. So let's go ahead and begin. First problem, we're going to rewrite x squared minus x minus 6 in factored form. Well, guys, if you remember that diagram that we had from the previous video, kind of tells you what you need to do. If I'm going from standard to factored form, I need to Punnett square. And the diagram is just a reference of what you need to do, but how you do it's what you need to remember. Okay? If we have all this in standard form, okay, somehow I need to put that in to the Punnett square. Well, the easy thing is taking care of that first term, the x squared. I know that's 1x squared. Put that in the top left. And what we end up with, the number, goes in the bottom right. Alright? So now, where does that leave us? I have a middle term here. I'm going to highlight it in yellow. I have a middle term. That means I need to put x here and x here. Not one there, put one there. The next thing I need to do is to multiply the 1 in the Punnett square with the negative 6, which is negative 6. Now I need to think of two numbers that multiply to give me negative 6, but add to give me that middle term. It's in standard form, that B term. I'm trying to find B. Okay? Well, that middle term is negative 1. Now, guys, knowing your multiplication facts helps greatly. Okay? One of these has to be negative, so I'm going to say negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. And when I multiply them together, it gives me the negative 6. That's how I want to set that up. Now, I can put negative 3 and 2 anywhere I want in the Punnett square, the remaining squares. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at factoring this out. This part's going to give me the answer. So I'm going to put my answer right here. Well, let's find the greatest common factor along the bottom row. Greatest common factor of 2 and 6 is 2. The sign closest to that answer, that's the sign that goes with. I'm going to go ahead and put plus 2 right here. Well, let's go ahead and take care of the top row. What do they have in common? Greatest common factor on 1 and 3 is, well, 1. And they both have an x. So there's that x. Okay. Now, let's go to the columns. What does this first column have in common? X. Next column, they both have the greatest common factor of 3 and 6 is 3. And since this is negative, That is negative. So that takes care of my first example. Okay, that's the factored form of x squared minus 1x minus 6. Alright, at any point, I would pause, have Mr. Teeters pause the video so you can write down the steps. Alright, so same thing. I'm going to factor something that's in standard form. Now I'm going to hit pause on this. See if you can do it on your own. Well, welcome back. I told you to hit pause. Try it on your own. Guys, that's all it took on that example. Not a whole lot to explain here. I did the exact same steps as I did example 1. Okay. This one looks a little bit more detailed, I guess, but like I said, I knew I was going from standard to factored form. If it says factor this, you're putting it in factored form. Okay, so you follow that map. Okay, if you're going from standard to factored, you need to use the Punnett squared. Okay. And multiply, this is why I have these two things underlined. I multiplied those two numbers to give me that 12 there. And they had to add together to give me this middle term. Alright. So, let's see what happens here in this next example. What happens if we have a number in front of the a number in front of the term x squared? Okay, I have 2. Alright. What I'd like to do is to check that first number, the A term, okay, if you will. I know I'm in standard form. Here's my A, my B, my C. And I got to put it in factored form. A is something other than 1. If you remember me saying that a couple months ago, thank you, okay? We need to see if A divides B and divides C evenly. Well, since A does divide B and A does divide C, I'm going to factor that 2 out. Basically, when I say something factors or divides something, 2 goes into 4 evenly, 2 goes into 96 evenly. So let's go ahead and factor this out. We're going to have 2 on outside of parentheses, x squared, 2 divided by 2 is 1, minus 4, I'm actually right here, 4 divided by 2, well that's actually 2, x minus 96 divided by 2 is 48. Okay, we'll get it here in a minute, honey. Alright, so now, the 2's factored out. I kind of just simplified this a little bit better. I still have something in standard form. So, I'm going to draw the Punnett square. Sorry, Lakin had to tell me something. I'm going to go ahead and draw the Punnett square. But the good thing I did was take out, be able to factor out the 2. That way, I can ignore that and just use this as my first term and use this as my last term. So I'm going to put 1x squared here minus 48 down here. Let me fix that a little bit. Alright. So all I did was factor out 2. 2 is gone. Okay? You can actually ignore it at that point. Well, for the moment, anyway. So I'm not going to mark it out. I'm just going to kind of leave it alone. You can draw a box around it if you want to. Just kind of ignore him for a moment. We're going to go back to him here in a second, but just trust me on this. So let's do what we do. Let's multiply the 1 and the negative 48. So we got negative 48. 1 times negative 48 is negative 48. I have a middle term, negative 2x. So I need to find two numbers that add to give me negative 2x, or negative 2, and multiply to give me negative 48. Well, 6 times 8 is 48. So I'm going to try negative 6, or negative 8 plus 6. I have a middle term, put x in the Punnett square, finish it out. Alright, so there's no rule what I did there. Okay, I could put negative 8, 6 in either spot. Now, we can do what we do. Negative's closest to this not answer that I'm going to put here, which that's going to be 8. These both have an x, so I took care of my rows. Okay, so I did this way. Now we got to do the columns. Sorry, I must have hit a wrong button. Both of these have an x. Greatest common factor of 6 and 48 is 6. 6 is positive, so that's going to be positive. This is negative, that's negative. Okay? Now, so what does that do? Well, obviously, it gave me the factored form of this right here. But what was chilling on the outside? What was the very first thing that we factored? What was in the box? So 2, once you factor him out, he's part of the answer, but it's going to be written as that. Okay? Now, so we looked at a quadratic equation. It's in standard form, and where a was something other than 1. Let's look at one more example and see what happens here. All right. So a is not 1. Okay. Lovely. I want to see if a divides b evenly and a divides c evenly. Now, this is why I like the Punnett square. It's one method that takes care of every situation. I don't know how else I can clarify that. It is one method for every situation, and I know that works best for us. That works best for anybody. So I can't factor out 4 because 4 does not divide 7 evenly or 2 evenly. Okay? Now, if 7 was 8 and 2 was 20, yeah, I could factor out the 4. That would be great. But that's not the case. So I need to draw the Punnett square anyway, since I'm going from standard to factored form. And I'm going to follow my rules. Okay, here's my middle term. Circle that middle term. Go ahead and put x's here and here. 4x squared will go in the top left. Negative 2 in the bottom right. Now, here's the cool part about this Punnett square. I can still multiply the a term and the c term. 4 times negative 2, that's negative 8. I can still find factors of negative 8 to add to give me the middle term, which is 7. Now, this might be a little bit neat. Should be neat. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8, but 8 plus negative 1 is 7. So I could put 8 and negative 1 in either one of these boxes. I'll put 8 here and negative 1 here. Okay, so here's the numbers I want to use in the Punnett square. So neat. Okay, now we can factor, find the greatest common factor out of our Punnett square. You're basically working a Punnett square backward. That's all that you're doing. So if I look at the bottom row here, the greatest common factor of 8 and 2 is 2. And since 8 is positive, that's positive. So when I come up here and I'm writing the factored form of this, well, this is going to be great. I'm going to put plus 2 right here. Okay, now let's go to the top row. What do they have in common? 1 and 4. Well, probably 1, but they both have x. Great. So I'm going to put x right here. Now let's go to our columns. Okay, what's the greatest common factor of 4 and 8? 4. And they both have x. 4x here. Sign closest is negative. Greatest common factor of 1 and 2 is 1. They don't have an x. Or one of them don't have an x. So here's what we are left with. Alright. So anyway, guys, I hope this helps. We just got to get better. Be confident. Be confident that you can actually do this. If you tell yourself you can't do something, you're not going to be able to do it. It's just what it is. It is what it is. Now, if you say, look, we've been at this for, a couple months, at least. Mr. Seidel's not going to give up on this, so maybe just allow yourself to try it out. Some of you just fight with yourself like, I don't feel like doing it, and it's just going to make things more difficult. Now, one more thing. Study Island. I'm going to reiterate something on this video. I'm going to open up all the ones that you've already done, and I haven't looked at the one from last Friday that was due this past Friday, because I guarantee half of you didn't do it. I'm going to reopen sometime this week the other study islands that some of you might have missed. Now, beyond that, it's up to you. You got 2 weeks to get what you haven't got done to bring up your grade. Next 9 weeks, I ain't doing it. Alright, so get working. I'll talk to you Wednesday.